Bozzdton versus Fenomeno that's coming up in this one, and Fino, pretty much the same story as Psycho in that, where it was dominance, absolute dominance. Started at 9-0, and has lost 2 matches in a row now. But you had mentioned something to me yesterday that I felt was quite interesting, as we can take a look at Fino's deck, and I'll touch on this a little bit. You mentioned that despite his record, in that it looks like he may almost be in a lock if he can pick up like literally one more win, he looked frustrated when he was losing his match.
He did, yeah, and we talked on Twitter a little bit last night as well, where you know, he was doing the thing of, you know, justifying plays that the caster had commented on, which is fair enough. And then he said to me, you know, like, just kind of tilted about losing that match, and like that's so cool to me that he's in such a comfortable position, and the matches, because he's done all of his work so already, just, you know, he'd be justified in feeling like he could afford to lose a match here and there, but still, just a defeat just tilts him. I think that is the mark of a true competitor.
Just wants to win.
Yep.
Just wants to win.
Yeah, but back to the deck list. Bozzzton, Mage, we're going to be facing down a Mage mirror here, and Bozzzton is, of course, the player who came out and said that Luna's Pocket Galaxy is a bad card, and he is not including it in his deck for that reason. Fenomeno along exactly the same lines. But in terms of techs going on beyond that, there's not really a lot going on, because tertiary for Bozzzton is anti-aggro, and secondary is more of an anti-warrior kind of thing, where dropping Frost Novas from your deck is not going to be a good look in the Mage mirror whatsoever.
Yeah, thing to note is that Bozzdton's a little bit tech for the mirror on. He's got Snap Freeze and a Twilight Drake that are in there to provide some consistency. Drops the Sea Giant that's in its place. Fino just on the cleaner list with the double Sea Giant and the copy of Frostbolt to try to fight back against some early pressure. So those could come into play here for Bozzdton, but you know, this is a super volatile matchup where coin and not coin matters so much. When you don't have the coin, it feels that you are more obligated to be aggressive. As the perhaps the needle starts early on here.
And you can see Fino perhaps still feeling the effects of that result from yesterday.
He's got a pretty good hand to be aggressive with, though. The Stargazer Luna, always a welcome sight, and the Sandbinder helps keep up your hand size while developing and threatens an early Conjurer's Calling as well.
Yeah.
For Bozzdton, to me, this looks like a very clear Sorcerer's Apprentice turn. You want to fight.
Someday I'll be just like you.
And Bozzdton agrees. Fino now has the choice about whether he wants to basically give impetus back to Bozzdton in terms of dealing with Stargazer Luna on board with his Sorcerer's Apprentice, because he doesn't really have any way to contest that Apprentice right now. His options are to go fishing for it with Magic Trick to find an answer, or try and essentially give up his Stargazer Luna just in order to take Sorcerer's Apprentice off the board, which is a very bad feeling in itself.
Yeah, especially because you have the Sandbinder into the next turn as well. So you feel incentivized to in some way try and take care of this. I think that letting go of the Luna is a bad position to be in. I think that you lose so much of your aggressive potential when that happens. Darius Crowley might have something to say about that. But it's also just the kicker beyond that. You play the Stargazer Luna and run a Banana Buffoon, the game might have ended.
Yes, that is also very true.
So I think that just taking your time looking for a Frostbolt or a Ray of Frost to handle it there, and then going into Sandbinder is just going to yield an overall better position on average.
Yep, agreed.
What to do?
And so for Bozzdton, when you see Astral Rift taken from Magic Trick, you know that he's looking for an answer to the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Why not play the second one? Well, the answer would be giant stuff, but I like damage.
I think giant stuff is a solid answer to that question. His hand isn't really chock full of things to take advantage of a Sorcerer's Apprentice right now, so the motivation would, as you say, just be damage and tempo and having things in play. But it looks like a hand that is going to have to fall back on giant stuff fairly soon.
Bozzdton gives the dead turn heed, and Fino acknowledges. This is the most communicative we've seen two players while playing.
Well, yeah, Fino set his stall out early in terms of the, well played, you got coin. I feel like that kind of opens the floodgates for both players.
Twilight Drake. Nice draw.
Very nice draw.
And this is the direct contrast of what we saw at the Master Tour in Las Vegas, where in the top 8, the Mage decks were very heavily teched differently. where it was Possessi. He had brought 2 copies of Sandbinder and had like almost no utility in the deck list. You look over at all the other Mage player side where some of them are not including Sandbinder, they're including 2 copies of Twilight Drake instead.
Right.
And it's like this face-off here, I feel like it has to favor the Twilight Drake, but I look at the hand size and I go, I don't know. Picking up elementals from your deck is a major benefit.
What to do? What to do?
The Rare Frost from Bozzzton is interesting as well. First and foremost, it protects his Sorcerer's Apprentice, but there's kind of a follow-on effect of protecting that Sorcerer's Apprentice, which takes away Fino's opportunity to have a really effective Conjurer's Calling turn. Because this is one of the things that you really look for in the Mage Mirror when you're going first, is Conjurer's Calling on 3-drops and 4-drops. So by using the Ray of Frost here, he weakens Fino's Conjurer's Calling so much because he takes away the opportunity to value trade into, pick up an amazing value trade, 2/4 into a Sorcerer's Apprentice, and then replace that with 2 4-drops. He just has to generate these into the 3/2,
Well played.
and well, that Stormwind Knight is
For the king.
the nuts.
He just came charging through that portal. Whatcha? That is such bad luck for Bozzzton.
Yep.
Militia Commander gets the job done.
What to do?
Core Chrono League
What
kinda
to
does,
do?
since that one's pretty ugly.
I can answer this question.
Rush
for you.
or charge
Give
effect.
me a second.
So you look at the way the game's panned out, that Twilight Drake's gonna, help from getting blown out of the water. But Bozzzton does not have a way to follow up on this Mountain Giant currently. Right now, just a big old thing.
There is a 12% chance of getting Rush or Charge off your 2 outcomes in that scenario.
Is that 12% per, or is 12%
12% total.
Okay. Objective time. Deal with Giant. Not happening. Next objective. Disrupt. Ooh. My head went towards the Luna and mirror image.
That's where I'm at right now as well.
The future
Let you add a
is
2/3 to the board if you so please.
I don't like starting this turn with the rope already burning. It just severely limits your options. In the end, it doesn't matter because he drew a whiff with the 3-mana
Yeah.
Frost Nova, but the options that come off there can require so much additional thought.
That's what I was thinking too. The 4 to face here I find interesting. Killing the Twilight Drake seemed appealing to me.
Whoa,
Well,
who are you?
well, hang
And
on.
what have you done with my friend Nathan Zamora?
Bozzzton running the 1 copy of Sea Giant is, I think, exactly what would change this. It's just less likely he has Sea Giant. You're more at freedom to deal the damage and pay less heed to that card.
Right.
I think with 2 Sea Giants in the list, Fino would have been trading there.
Someday I'll be just
I think you might be right.
you.
Wow, Cyclone as well here. Could be a pretty explosive mana Cyclone turn if he wants it.
Not necessarily the intended use of the Snap Freeze to kill a Luna, but it'll get the job done.
Yep. It's a point I brought up in the Ball Control versus Tice series that, kind of both of the decks involved there really suck at taking care of single target board objective minions, so that Snap Freeze can take care of essentially a 3-mana Gadget Sound Auctioneer in some situations, then yeah, sure, you take it.
Whoa! All right, well now things are getting a bit crazy. So the merits of Frost Nova versus Conjurer's Calling there stand out to me as things to think about. Where number one, my head says to Frost Nova to protect the Giant and then move forward. If you Conjurer's Calling right now, I feel like the Giants are at risk of what's on board. However, with Archmage Antonidas in hand,
Right.
does that change that implication?
I think it does.
Oh, God, the mid game is so complicated.
It's also worth noting that Fino got the best outcome for himself here because he didn't get any 7/8s, which the Giant can just run over, and then if there's a Conjurer's Calling picked up from Bozzdton, which he pretty clearly doesn't have a Conjurer's Calling currently, right, in his hand, but it can still be drawn from Fino's perspective.
Yeah, the Mana Cyclone can produce it or it can be drawn. So I think that's just an outcome Fino does not have liberty of paying heed to if he really wants to.
Yeah. I just make clear that like when we're evaluating Conjurer's Calling versus Frost Nova in this scenario, it's important, to pay heed to the fact that this is the best case scenario that Fino could be in with the line of play that
But even versus 7/8s, Bozzzton needs to find the Conjurer's Calling because Fino believes it's not there.
Yep. Also worth noting that the way that Fino traded was very efficient on the previous turn. He had an option of 2 different 2/2s that he could have used to trade off, and he used the one that cost 2 as opposed to the one that cost 4. Which is just kind of strictly correct when you're playing this mage. Keep the minions on board more expensive.
All right, we've entered first Frost Nova territory, and when this starts, Bozzzton is going to need to be able to capitalize on the back of this. So the damage is an opportunity.
Ooh.
There's no Conjurer's Calling left.
Nope.
So for Fino, I think this turn looks pretty darn strong on the... Whoa. So he's going to use Mirror Entity here? I was thinking Darius Frost Nova all day, every day. The last thing I want to happen is Bozzzton rip a Conjurer's Calling and suddenly have, you know, an additional 14 to 16 attack on board.
Right.
And this also threatens back. And since Bozzzton was the first one to launch a freeze effect, how is that going to affect things long term? If you cannot capitalize and you're the first freeze, that is often bad news.
Yeah, I tend to lean towards the Darius here as well. It threatens lethal on board, I believe, after this trades over the Khadgar. 16, 8, and 20, yeah, the Frost Nova, so it will demand significant answers from Bozzzton. And as you said, Bozzzton cannot just start throwing out Frost Novas every single turn because eventually that means he runs out of answers while Fino has some to spare.
Another Giant.
It's not what he needs. And that Frost Nova, far left, Bozzdton's hand, that is his most valuable resource now. That is worth its weight in gold. And Fino just makes the play as aggressive as possible to demand that that second Frost Nova gets used.
Yep, big tax. If you want to live, it's going to cost your gold. Very RPG-esque.
What to do? What to do?
I kind of want to throw in the counterspell with it. This fetches the Mana Cyclone though.
Yep.
So this helps him on the following turn when he needs to have something big. And so he can deviate away and use the Ray of Frost, pick up 2 generations, and say, I'm not going to die to the damage that's there. So I'll take my time, see if this board is threatening enough to force Fino to have more answers. Indeed he does, but he's turned a little bit of that dynamic back around. So Fino has another puzzle in front of him here. How do you get to use the Cone of Cold for the same effect? And I feel like the life total is part of what's hurting that.
Positioning pretty good for Bozzzton as well. He's got good separation between all of the big threats that he wants to have in play. But yeah, I like Bozzzton's play, just stretching out, recognizing that he didn't have to use that Frost Nova. He certainly has the advantage in terms of health total here, which allows him to take a lot more liberties than Fino can afford to do. Fino just, you know, can't leave any amount of damage really available attacking to face, because if he does so, he starts being dead to fireballs and frostbolts that are randomly generated here as opposed to just pyroblasts. He's pretty much already cooked against a pyroblast if that's the case. But the luxury that he has is that additional Cone of Cold pickup that he's found. And now this ever-growing Darius Crowley starts to become a huge deal in itself.
Yeah, that Darius has farmed up some nice items.
Yeah, this mirror entity not only represents another huge threat that could be picked up for Fino here for extra damage, but it also creates havoc in Bozzzton's mind about whether he needs to play around counterspell, whether splitting image comes into play, and of course mirror entity and all that business as well. Secrets are just one of the most disruptive tools, especially Mage secrets.
It just made me think of Bozzzton's turn. I was picturing, well, he checks with his own secret, and then he gets word that Fino's secret doesn't affect his secrets. Then he adds another secret, and then he frost overs it. It's just,
yeah.
It's like both players' plays are like, anything you can do, I can do better.
Right.
Like that feels like the dance that's been happening right now. And so I feel like with Bozzzton on this other Frost Nova gets responded back with on Fino's side by a Frost Nova, and then we're back to the initial square. Fino made use of his alternate freeze card after Bozzzton did. We're still in that initial spot. You use the first freeze. Could you get the big payoff afterwards?
So Bozzzton gets the news that it's not Frost Nova. Sorry, it's not Frost Nova, that it's not Counterspell, which frees him up to be able to play that Frost Nova. But I assure you, he is not happy about being out of freezes in his hand anymore.
The Counterspell is a point where he's saying Fino has to have a spell to go with it. That's not always going to happen, although it's pretty super ultra likely that it happens.
Well, crucially, it does shut down now Archmage Antonidas Frost Nova as a play, which could potentially be game-ending, because not only then would Fino be representing lethal while his opponent is out of freezes, it means any more randomly generated freezes have to deal with the sad reality that there is still an Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah, and so seeing that Frost Nova is the pained look that Bozzzton has, and rightfully so. You took the risk of the first freeze, and now you suffer.
Yep. Ooh.
Don't use the first freeze.
That's the turn we'd have to go back and look at, right? The situation in which the first Frost Nova was used and whether that was absolutely mandatory for Bozzzton in that position.
Yeah, I say don't use the first freeze, but you know, perhaps he's looking at a situation where it gets out of control if he doesn't.
Right.
I don't fault him for that, and it does put Fino also in a you gotta have it position, which I'm never really opposed to. Just curious if there is another way.
Yeah, like sometimes you just got to throw into the mix that, you know, if the game has progressed that quickly where, you know, there's 15, 16, 17 cards left in both players' decks and you're sat staring at 2 Frost Novas in your hand, you are heavily favored to have the most Frost Novas in your hand.
Yes.
And therefore you can choose to go in that position. You know, like most rules, when Admirable says don't use the first Frost Nova, I can immediately start listing 15 different exceptions.
Yeah,
but
it's a guideline.
It's a guideline, exactly. Yeah. You cannot play Hearthstone by general rules. You will hover around a 50% win rate your entire life if that's what you do.
Yeah, so I do appreciate his risk in that. It's just very volatile. And again, this feels like a sub-theme for Bozzzton's games too, where it's like he's making risky calls and it's just the bad thing keeps happening.
Yeah. That gesture says it all.
Yeah.
It would have to be that turn that we looked at. If we went back and looked at that very first turn where the Frost Nova was thrown out, and whether that was entirely mandatory, because he tried to find himself an extra turn with the Rare Frost, couldn't quite do so, but we've still got a lot to break down, so to give us a little extra time to do that, why don't we just take a quick break and we will be back with the rest of this series.
I'm Will Barton. I'm also Amnesiac, the young savage. I was Amnesia SC for like 3 years. But since I didn't have a microphone when I started playing Hearthstone, everyone was just like, oh, it's Amnesiac. And I was like, no, but there was no mic. So I was just like, yes, okay. So I think my experience for Grandmasters was different from a lot of people because in my mind, there was just never any way I wasn't gonna be in the league. I've been top 5 in points in North America for like 4 years now or something, 3 or 4 years. I have a big presence online. I think people get excited when I come onto streams and watch them. I'm somebody people can kind of get behind. So in my mind, when they announced Grandmasters, I was like, all right, let's do it. In terms of Hearthstone, I still really think that I have what it takes to be one of, if not the best players in the world. And I really intend to put in more work than I did last year and be more disciplined. I think I got a lot better at using my time over the past year, and I want to apply that skill and show people just how good I can be.
My name is Francisco Fraile Montas. One of my best friends came out with my nickname. We are all getting like nicknames with 3 letters for some reason, like 13 years old. My name is Francisco, and Francisco's are called Pancho. So it's just like 3 letters from that, P and C. One interesting thing about me that most people don't know is that I used to study ancient history. I quit for Hearthstone a couple of years, but plan on going back at one point. My favorite Hearthstone Esports moment was when I topped like Lethal 2016 Copa America Finals. That was like my first big win, and I was very, very happy. It's like finally all that I worked for coming true. Beating Grandmasters for me means that all the hard work that I put in last years and all the time that I spent the game is paying off. My favorite thing about Grandmasters would be that I get a chance to prove myself like on the big stage. What makes me unique as a player, I would say, is just bringing very complicated decks to tournament, like mostly combo decks that people usually don't play. My personal goals this year will be to earn as much money as I can, of course, and yes, improve as a player and play the best I can.
Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters here for the European region. We are amidst match number 4 right now. Fino taking on Bozzzton in this one. And Bozzzton, pretty narrowly fell on that one. It was the difference of a single freeze effect that would have made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, because he was off to the quicker start as well. He was in the position there we saw at the end where he picked up his Archmage Antonidas, which if he'd then been able to pair with a remaining Frost Nova in his hand, could have potentially just locked out the game, because Fino was at such a low life total that he would not have been able to ignore that Antonidas in any way. So therefore, even if he had further freezes remaining or was able to generate more freezes, the Antonidas would have just locked out the game with 1 or 2 fireballs.
Yep, and since we're using Specialist here, players do not have a secondary or tertiary deck, which impacts the matchup. They have to play their primary deck in game number 1, and then they're bringing 2 other decks that can supplement against some strategies. They'll be playing the same class, but they can exchange up to 5 cards in one of those other 2 strategies. So in games 2 and 3 is where those options become unlocked for them. They don't have to announce them to their opponent, but in this one, you can quite easily anticipate they'll be sticking to their first 30 cards.
And everything is right and balanced in the world as Fino now picks up the coin for game number 2 in the series. Having broken serve, essentially, by winning game number 1 while being on the play. You saw his strategy where he just played out early minions and tried to Conjurers call them, which is very much what you look to do when going first. That wasn't really what ended up being relevant in the matchup. It did come down to more of the classic Frost Nova battle that we do see these matchups devolve into sometimes.
There's one thing you could expect from Fino. It's coin and 2s.
Whoa, that too.
I like that too.
Okay.
I like that.
Why
too.
do you like that too?
There's a couple of reasons. Number 1, Bozzzton really doesn't want to kill this 2, so you'll get chip damage in. Number 2, it takes Bozzzton off of Sorcerer's Apprentice a lot of times. Whether that's going to be from him killing it or from Bozzzton just simply not playing it, it works out. So now Bozzzton has used Sorcerer's Apprentice and Ray of Frost to answer a Mana Cyclone, and then Fino responds with a top deck Frostbolt.
Guys!
In this instance, it was supposed to be a Sorcerer's Apprentice. And so Fino matches the Sorcerer's Apprentice after the removal spell and answers the Sorcerer's Apprentice in the process.
Do you have somewhere to be? I understand that we're running late, but like, let the cards come into your hand before you start flinging them out.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Play your game.
All right, fine.
I like when that Frostbolt just actually just spits from the deck.
What to do?
It's like your deck's on the Sorcerer's Apprentice. No! Just Frostbolts it for
just
you.
spat out of the middle. It wasn't even the next draw. It just went, oh, there's an apprentice you can't kill.
The innkeeper pops up. He's like, oh, you probably want to kill that apprentice.
Oh, no, what's the name of the helper that you can pick as a treasure?
Wondrous Wonderball.
Is that the guy? Yeah. He's a pro. That guy gets the job done.
Have you tried Frostbolting a Sorcerer's Apprentice?
Yeah, exactly.
When both players have 2 of them, and Bozzzton has had to expend his, rightfully so, he is, the player going first, you typically have to be the aggressor in the matchup in some way.
Hey, this is interesting, by the way. This is a very similar scenario to what we saw in game number 1, where I was talking about the opportunity of playing Stargazer Luna just to contest a Sorcerer's Apprentice and potentially shut it down. And Fino chose not to wait for a Sandbinder on the following turn, whereas this game he does the exact opposite.
I think that's A, his hand context. It's much better this game. And then B, he had the coin. And so if he's trading down resources, that exhausts Bozzzton's side because you have the natural addition. And then B, just look at it. You get to keep 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice with a Luna's Pocket Galaxy and Arcane Intellect in your hand.
Yep.
You're going to play 2 Sorcerer's Apprentices, and if Bozzzton can't answer them, you get to Luna's Pocket Galaxy and Arcane Intellect in the same turn with 1 additional mana.
Yep.
This is a nightmare for Bozzzton, and he doesn't know it because the Luna's Pocket Galaxy is just not in Fino's deck.
Oh, I disagree. I think he knows it. Regardless of whether he knows there's a Luna's Pocket Galaxy in the hand, 2 Sorcerer's Apprentices that he can't interact with, he knows that's a disaster for him.
That's the part he knows is a disaster, but this is about to get way more disastrous. Fino gets mad that he draws a Mountain Giant. Look at your turn, dude. I would concede if I was against you. I would just quit.
He still looks angry.
And he should be, you know? If it's going to bother you, get that heat off your chest and go forward.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot, too, where for Fino, it's not like a tilt that affects his play.
No.
If he just tried to contain all that and expended mental energy on looking stoic, it might have.
And honestly, like, while players have cameras on them purely for our entertainment and for the entertainment of people watching, I would rather they reacted to things like actual real-life human beings than sat around emotionless like a bunch of robots.
Does it look even better when you're that tall on the soapbox? You're already tall to begin with.
I'm not that tall.
That's your takeaway, not the callback. I agree. Darn, I guess I'll pay 6 for my 8/8.
Yeah.
And attack for 8. There are no more Mana Cyclones left, so Sandbinder generates a 1-cost Mountain Giant.
Oh,
By the way, it moves to 0 cost after the discount.
it sure does. Card text goes last. There was actually a little discussion about this on Twitter about the card Scorch and why it ends up still costing 1 mana even when there is a Sorcerer's Apprentice on the board. And it's because card text goes last in the order of operations.
Rules layering.
Yes.
Cool. I'm not saying cool facetiously, even though I realize in hindsight
It did
sounded
really sound like it.
Yeah, I never mean it that way. Like, you could tell when I mean it that way because I start talking like this.
Again, Bozzzton really faced with little choice except committing Frost Nova. Does find himself the extra Blizzard this time around, though. For Fino's just cooking now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Although, if Bozzzton can find another freeze, I think he's got some life. Oh, Fino's going to take that away. He says, you know what, if I just kill the minion, this is harder? Why would he be using this?
It plays around exactly Sea Giant Blizzard.
Can you do that better? He's just spending his cards.
Yep, I like it. He had mana to spend, so he spent it.
And it does Fino's play around Sea Giant Blizzard.
Yep.
I wonder if he's thinking that. I'm going to write that question down.
Blizzard is a way he can lose in this
Turn
scenario.
7, Game 2, Sea Giant Blizzard.
Yeah. I mean, it's looking like we're going to get to interview Fino in about 45 seconds from now, so it's probably not that hard to remember.
Of course, now my pen runs out of ink. Whatever, I'm going to remember it.
I think it's a reasonable world to delve into because Fino knows with one Frost Nova being used kind of loosely from Bozzzton there again, that there are probably going to have to be randomly generated freezes to get Bozzzton back into this game. So I think considering that mana combination, it's not an unreasonable thing to do.
You're just accounting for it. Yeah. It looked very quick, but Fino's played a lot of Mage, and he's quite clearly demonstrated that he's very strong in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, the turn that I was discussing with him on Twitter that he made yesterday, he made very quickly, and he says he was playing around some very specific combinations with the play that he made. So if that's all true, then he is able to calculate a lot of these very weird Sea Giant math situations very quickly.
I seriously thought he was going to ping himself. I really did.
What? Why?
Well, because the arrow just pointed at himself, and I thought he was just going to style on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to join you on the soapbox. I wish players would style on each other more.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's do it.
Dan better hope that caster tournament goes his way next week.
Fino has gone from looking angry at how well this game's been going to just looking bored.
Sign of the ever-desperate man.
Yep.
Double. Oh, the wrong 0 attack
going
again.
fishing for the Doomsayer, which
why is the Conjurer's Calling hiding from
exactly.
me?
For the sake of drama, can we just move that card note over to the other side of the screen so we can see if it's a Doomsayer or not immediately? Jeez.
Come on, Conjurer's Calling.
Yeah.
Pick it up.
That second game was a blowout. That was just a beat.
Yeah.
But I will say the way that it was engineered was not obvious, right? Like, it's conceivable that Fino would not have been in that position because the Luna, just to get rid of his opponent's Sorcerer's Apprentice, coining out the Mana Cyclone as his first 2-drop as opposed to either of the Sorcerer's Apprentices, which then meant the removal was used to kill the Cyclone, the removal was then used to kill the the Luna, and then he was left remaining with 2 Sorcerer's Apprentices, which just kept living until that Blizzard we saw on the penultimate turn of the game.
Yeah, and honestly, to me, that really boils down to the coin Mana Cyclone and recognizing that A, the tempo in the game really matters, and that B, almost every way that Bozzzton can actively respond, Fino's hand context means that he can play it aggressively and get into a spot like that. Obviously, the Luna's Pocket Galaxy is a massive pickup. There's no two ways around that. But I think even without that Luna's Pocket Galaxy, you're watching his iteration land him in a favorable spot.
Yep. Well, I hope you remembered your question, Admirable, because we have got the interview ready to go with Fino. Fino, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey guys, what's up?
What up? I want to talk to you specifically about turn 7 and the Sea Giant and all of the stuff that you did very quickly. What was going through your head that turn?
I have no idea wait, on the last game?
Okay,
so
I said the Sea Giant thing.
You Arcane Explosioned and killed a 2/2 Mana Cyclone. Did you specifically have Sea Giant combinations from your opponent in your mind that turn as you were doing it?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Oh, okay. You happened to play around. You happened to play around exactly Sea Giant Blizzard.
No, I just wanted to kill it, so it's that. I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't think I had any other use for mana for the card. I didn't want to leave it on board.
So you only have really in-depth explanations for your plays when you want to call me out on Twitter, right?
Wait, are you talking about the last game?
Yeah, the second game.
Yeah, game 2.
I mean, the last game was over. I wasn't thinking about anything. Like, did you not see the game? Like, I wasn't thinking. Like, the only thing I was thinking about was if I could kill my Khadgar with Ray of Frost, but I only had 1. If I had 2, I would kill Khadgar with Ray of Frost because there's no possible way that I lose. I thought about Flame Strike the turn before. That's the only thing I thought that game. Because if he Flame Strikes me and trades the Draken, That's why I didn't freeze it. I wanted to leave it up, so if he got randomly generated Flame Strike and he goes for it, then I can just play the card Conjure Conjure Calling and the game is over, right? So I wanted to, if he has that and goes for that, I think I just always win. So, yeah.
So I want
Also,
to.
I missed you, Solo.
You missed me? Oh, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I missed you too. So I want to ask you specifically about like your emotions while you were playing. There was a lot of back and forth in that game with like emotes, and you were reacting to certain draws and certain outcomes as well. And I know you said to me last night that like the loss yesterday like really hit you hard.
Yeah, I did.
It's like a mark of a serious competitor that like even when you're in as a comfortable position as you are right now with like top of the league, that you are still like feeling every loss hard. Like how do you stay motivated to just keep pushing?
I mean, I just want to win, like that's the thing. I don't care if the game matters or not. I always just want to win because that's just who I am. But like yesterday was really rough for me because like, this thing with the coin and the mage mirrors is just so annoying to me that like, you just get the coin, you don't get the coin, and it's just such a huge difference, and it can really just decide games. And yesterday that game was just a roller coaster because I was off coin like both times, and I think game one I really like I had a good start, so I thought I was gonna win. And then when I reviewed the game, like I talked with Hunter Ace, I told him like, what's the series? Because like, maybe I did something bad or that I just couldn't think about it because it was actually the first time in a while I was actually tilted about Hearthstone.
Wow.
Like I don't even remember the last time that I was tilted, but here he watched the game and he told me that turn that I Flame Strike, that if I just save the Flame Strike, and there's just no possible way that I lose. And I was even arguing with him all the time yesterday that he's wrong and I always Flame Strike. And then when I rewatched it again today with a clear mind, he was 100% right. I shouldn't have Flame Strike, but it was weird for me because, as I said, I don't normally get tilted, but yesterday was a weird day.
Fino, we are kindred
and that's all
spirits.
about the coin.
We are kindred spirits. I appreciate your passion at the core of it to defend your play to the bitter end until you realize, you know what,
Yeah.
it could have been better.
No, we all do that, I think. We all try to, defend what we think for quite a while until we're like, okay, he's just right. Like, I'm going to look like an idiot if I keep going, so...
No, that's what I mean. You and I are way above and beyond everybody else on that measure. I will defend it to the bitter end. I'm usually coming up a little bit, wrong more often, though.
Are you happy with being called a kindred spirit? With that's admirable. Is that something that you're comfortable with, Fino?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I think that tells you all you need to know, Fino. I think we'll let you go. Well played, buddy. Congratulations.
Right. Yeah, thank you guys.
Unlucky.
After my birthday of all days.
I know. Imagine if it was yesterday, though. That would just be even more brutal.
I think I just would have laughed at that point, too.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't typically bring up my birthday. I remember on my 18th birthday, I actually forgot it was my birthday.
No way.
It was, so Kit Kat, so he used to be a professional Hearthstone player.
Yeah.
I've been friends with him basically my whole life playing cards. And on my 18th birthday, I was sitting at my friend's house and I was playing online poker because, I just turned 18. And he peeks in the room about 11 p.m. He goes, "Is it your birthday?" I went, "Oh, it is." And he goes, "Happy birthday." I went, "Thanks." Never mentioned my birthday again to him.
That was a really enjoyable interview to me, though. Just Fino, I love talking to him. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he has very interesting thoughts about the game sometimes. Interesting that the Flame Strike play came up, because that is something that we talked about a lot during that game. Just goes to show you the depth of play that goes into this. But we'll see how Fino's wins have affected the standings in the group, which we can take a look at right now, because as mentioned, he is far and away sitting in the dominant position now. 10-2. He's hit double digits. There are 2 numbers in his win column now, Admirable.
Yeah, indeed there is. I want to touch again on your interview, Fino thoughts. He's just very candid, and I really appreciate that. But I'm looking at 2 numbers in the win column, and there is nothing more exciting to me in Hearthstone than when the number I need to get bigger hits the double-digit territory, and that's exactly where you want your wins to be.
Yep, and I think Fino is very, very proud to be leading the way. When he was remaining as the last undefeated player He was very proud of that fact, and as he mentioned, it doesn't matter how locked he is for finals, he is going to still feel every loss like a dagger to the heart, and when you hate losing that much, that's why you keep winning.
Indeed.